Hello, I am the Ohio Sports Guy, and we're about a month out from NFL preseason football beginning with the Hall of Fame game, and 2023 gets make or break years for many of the athletes in the NFL, but it's also the perfect time for 10 players or even more to have a breakout campaign. So today, we're going to discuss 10 NFL players who 2023, it'll be their year to finally have a breakout year and become the player we all thought that they could be, or at this point in time think they can be. All right, let's go. Jeudy, Denver Broncos. Jeudy is entering year 4 with the Denver Broncos, and each of his past couple of years have been a little lackluster to say the least for him. His best year up to date was last season with 972 yards and 6 touchdowns, but he hasn't been the player we thought, or even the Broncos organization thought he would be when they spent a top 15 draft pick back during the 2020 NFL draft. But now he has a new head coach, Sean Payton, and hopefully Russell Wilson in year 2 in Mile High City can finally figure things out, and if he can, Jeudy is poised to take a big leap in his game, and hopefully for the Broncos, lead them to the promised land of the playoffs. If not, at least put up a great stat line. My prediction for his stat line of the season, 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, an overall solid year for what was once a first-round draft pick. Chase Young, Washington Commanders. Chase Young has shown flashes throughout his time in the NFL of being the elite pass rusher everyone thought he'd be, going number 2 in the 2020 NFL draft, and going back to that first year he was great. He had 7.5 sacks en route to becoming Rookie of the Year. Since then, in only 2 years extra played, 1.5 sacks, and that's not pretty good. Even though he has been injured, only 12 games. That is pretty disappointing for what was once a top draft pick. But with no fifth-year option, this is now a contract year for Chase Young, and a lot of defensive players, especially them, I'm not saying offensive players don't do the same thing, their contract year might be the best year of their career. So I'm expecting big things here for Chase Young in what could be his final year in Washington. My prediction, 10 sacks and 1 forced fumble on the year. Overall, if you're Washington, you'll take that going into what could be a make-or-break year for Riverboat Ron at the helm. Kyle Pitts, Atlanta Falcons. Similar to Chase Young, Kyle Pitts has put up some pretty good stat lines, especially looking back to year 1 where he eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark and put 1 touchdown on the end of that. But in year 2, not so much. 356 yards and 2 touchdowns, which one of those, it wasn't an improvement, but only 3 career touchdowns in 2 years from a top 4 draft pick on a tight end, a position that you can probably draft towards the middle to the back end of the first round at the earliest. I mean, not the greatest value, but the Falcons have been doing this for years. Drafting guys who have lots of talent but don't fit their system. But I believe this is the year for Kyle Pitts to finally break out and establish himself as a top 10, if not top 5 tight end in the game. You obviously have your guys on top of everyone. Kelsey in his own category. Then you have your George Kittles, Hawkinsons of the world in that category. But then you get into kind of tier 3, and this is where he can kind of slot in this year. Be around what Evan Ingram was last year, a top 5 fantasy tight end. I believe this is the year for Kyle Pitts, and if not, then the Falcons fans got to be regretting this draft pick, not drafting someone else with that high of a pick back in 2021. My prediction for him, 1,400 yards and 8 touchdowns on the year. Overall, a breakout year for Kyle Pitts, and he'll be here to stay if he can do that. Will Anderson, Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, with the 3rd pick in this past draft, got an absolute steal of Will Anderson, who many believe to be the top prospect in this draft, but positional value brought him down to the 3rd pick behind 2 great quarterbacks in Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. But Houston might have found themselves what they really thought Jadeveon Clowney could have been 9 years ago. I mean, he might have only posted 10 sacks last year compared to the 17 the year before with the Crimson Tide. But Will Anderson, he can make a big impact on this Houston team. Yes, they're not going to reinvent the wheel or do anything crazy, but they're looking for bright spots. They're looking at guys who can be around for the long haul and bring them into their next age of hopefully some more success. I mean, they had something going under Deshaun Watson until he forced his way out in the 2019-2020 season, around then when things started to sour almost, even leading up to the point where players on the organization apologized to J.J. Watt for wasting a year of his prime. I mean, if they could avoid similar situation happening and Will Anderson being told that in 5 years' time, I mean, if that does happen again, then Will Anderson will probably have the career path of J.J. Watt. But Houston's looking to win soon, and I believe Will Anderson can start his rookie year, do well, and be the cornerstone of this Houston Texans defense for the next decade at least. My prediction for him, 12 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and to put the cherry on top, a Defensive Rookie of the Year award in Will Anderson's name. Overall, Houston can't complain with the number 3 pick if this is indeed what he does in year one. Jahan Dotson, Washington Commanders. Jahan Dotson will be our third wideout, second wide receiver of this video, but I believe I am most confident in this prediction out of any of the other two mentioned so far, because just look at the system around him. Terry McLaurin is receiver number one. He'll take a lot of the attention of top corners away from Dotson. And I mean, in the 12 games he played last year, 523 yards and 7 touchdowns is not anything to scoff at for a rookie. But even though he only played in 12 games, he showed glimpses of being a top receiver 2 in the game and can kind of be what the Jefferson-Thielen duo was in Minnesota towards the end of that time, but just in a lot younger way. And this is something that needs to be said. McLaurin scored 2 less touchdowns last year than Jahan Dotson. Yes, he had over 1,000 yards, but only 5 touchdowns to his name. So I believe what you're going to see is similar to what you see if you play a lot of Madden. Your receiver 2 or receiver 3 will get all the touchdowns, and your top guy getting a few touchdowns. I believe McLaurin will put up more than 5 touchdowns this coming year, but look for Jahan Dotson to be the main guy. And with that being said, the prediction I have for Jahan Dotson, 900 yards and 12 touchdowns. If he can do that and McLaurin can get 7, that's 19 touchdowns right there. And with Sam Howell, a young quarterback with only 1 game started under his belt so far, he could use these guys, and honestly, they could do something in the NFC East if enough things happen around them. Washington Commanders, Sam Howell. Okay, hold on, before you go crazy and try to have a pitchfork thrown at my head here. Hear me out here. This one sounds crazy, but there is logic to this situation. Taylor Heinicke was a solid quarterback for Washington and almost beat Tom Brady in a playoff game. He almost beat the greatest quarterback of all time after having pretty much no starting experience whatsoever. If he could do that in Washington with, let's be honest, less help at that time, Sam Howell can be a solid starting quarterback for the Commanders. I'm not saying that he's going to go be the best player of all time, get comeback player of the year, and be what Geno Smith was for Seattle, posting 4,000 yards. I'm saying he can be a solid, serviceable quarterback, just like the late 2010s Baker Mayfield was. And coming out of the draft from UNC, Sam Howell's height, weight, frame, and play style screamed of Baker Mayfield. They're basically the same player, just Sam Howell's a little bit younger. So when making this prediction, I had a number in mind for passing yards, and then I looked to a season of Baker Mayfield's where he was at his best in 2020. Maybe not the best statistical season for passing yards, but I believe Sam Howell could put up similar stats just on a little bit of a less scale, because look at the Browns from that year. You had a washed Odell Beckham at that point where, I mean, yeah, he was decent, but he wasn't the greatest receiver of all time. And you had Jarvis Landry. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson in their current form might be better than those two at that point in time. So I'd expect to see a big year from Sam Howell, and that leads to my prediction for him. 3,600 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Baker Mayfield was a little bit less in the passing yard department, 1 more touchdown and 4 less interceptions. Based on that frame of reference alone, this Sam Howell prediction looks a lot more realistic than you would think. Bijan Robinson, Atlanta Falcons. During his 3 years at Texas, Bijan Robinson's numbers only increased throughout his time there, climaxing in 1,580 rushing yards and 18 touchdowns on 258 carries, 6.1 yards per carry in 2022, which is really impressive for the young running back. And with the Falcons taking him with the 8th pick, they're going to use him plenty. Yes, they still have Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson in the backfield, but Bijan Robinson is going to be the main guy from day one. You don't waste a top 10 pick on a running back in this age of the NFL if you don't plan on using him right away. So I would expect to see a lot of usage for Bijan Robinson, and ultimately one of the best seasons that we could see from the Falcons team in a long while, especially from the running back department. They might not do anything making noise in the playoffs, but I believe Bijan will do just enough to keep the Falcons fans interested in this organization. My prediction for him, 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns, and to put the cherry on top, Offensive Rookie of the Year. And if he can do this, Falcons fans, you got your running back for the next 10 years. Breece Hall, New York Jets. Okay, this one might be a little bit of cheating here, but it's my video. I make the rules. Breece Hall, we'll keep him in here. He's coming off a season-ending ACL tear, which also makes me more comfortable with calling this a breakout star. But even before that happened, 463 yards and 4 touchdowns in, I believe, 7 games. Pretty impressive for him. And yes, there's guys like Michael Carter behind him who could take some of the workload off of him. That can only help him get more yards. And looking last year to the Packers, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon combined for around 1,800 yards. So with Aaron Rodgers, I'd say there's room for about 2,000 yards, give or take, combined with the running backs in the backfield. And honestly, I don't think the Jets are going to abandon Breece Hall. Even if his production isn't there in the rushing game when I go to his prediction, I believe the receiving game will be a saving grace and make this a breakout candidate. And honestly, a top 2 round pick here in fantasy football, because Breece Hall, he can really impress for the Jets this year. My prediction on the ground, 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns. If you add in his receptions, I would say get him up to around 17 all-purpose yards and around 14 touchdowns on the year. Overall, if Breece Hall can do this, the Jets have a chance to squeak into the playoffs in what will be now a very competitive AFC East. J.C. Horn, Carolina Panthers. In 2022, which is the second year of his career, J.C. Horn had a pretty good year, getting 3 interceptions to his name, boosting the one that he had back in his rookie year of 2021, but there's still more room for improvement. Yes, even though his numbers went up from 1 to 7 pass defended, I believe that is just the tip of the iceberg for J.C. Horn, who him and Jeremy Chin can create a defensive duo in the secondary that could be elite for years to come. And 2023, it could be his year to break out. So with that said, my prediction, 5 interceptions, 15 passes defended, 70 combined tackles, and a Pro Bowl appearance, the first of his career. Overall, if J.C. Horn can do this, then the Carolina Panthers defense is going to start looking scary, just back like they did in the days of Luke Kuechly in the mid-2010s. Colby Dean, Philadelphia Eagles. Colby Dean was an elite linebacker in college during his days with the Georgia Bulldogs, and in 2022, with him slipping to the 3rd round, everyone thought the Eagles had the steal of the draft. This would be an elite player to add to an already great team. Yeah, he didn't do much. I mean, only 9 combined tackles to his game, 0 games started. But this year, I believe things can change. According to ESPN's depth chart, he is slotted to start at the middle linebacker position for the Eagles this year, and I believe that he can finally put away the idea that he was not a steal and make him become truly the steal of the 2022 draft. And the Eagles' defense is already elite, as it is a lot of Georgia Bulldogs that can help him, make him feel more comfortable and have a lot more chemistry. I mean, the Eagles GM loves to draft Georgia Bulldogs. If you asked him to draft an Alabama Crimson Tide player over a Georgia Bulldog, he might resign on the spot at this point. I mean, looking this year, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis in years past, Jalen Carter. The Eagles love to get the Georgia Bulldogs on their defense, and the Georgia Bulldogs defense of the last couple of years has been one of the best college football has ever seen. So I believe that will finally translate over to the NFL, and Colby Dean will have the best breakout year out of any of these guys on this list. So my prediction for him, 90 combined tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 1 will be returned for a touchdown, mind you, 1 interception, and 1 Pro Bowl appearance. Well-deserved for Colby Dean, and if he can do this, the Eagles might get back to the Super Bowl and might be able to dethrone whoever the AFC sends forward, whether it be Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, T-Law, or even Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, let's be a little bit realistic here. It's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. That will take us to the end of today's video. If you joined, give it a like below and subscribe. Comment down below. Am I talking absolute nonsense here, or do I have some truth into what I'm saying here? As well, last weekend I commentated for 3 softball games for Explosive Fast Pitch. So if you have not seen those games yet, go to the live tab on this channel's little page here on YouTube. Go watch those 3 games. All 3 close games at some point in them. I believe the first game was around a 1 or 2 run game. The other one, they started off close, but one team was able to pull away in each one of them. So definitely go back and watch those and see some talented softball players who will be the future of the game in Northeast Ohio. But with that, that'll take us to the end of the video now after the little wrap-up, I guess it is. But have a good day, everyone, and peace.